The screen is dark. We hear the soft hum of a fireplace, the faint wind outside, and then, crack. A snow globe slips from someone's hand and shatters across hardwood. The glass glitters on the floor like tiny diamonds. We see a woman, Ella Whitaker, early 30s, pale, barefoot, standing in the doorway. Her silk robe flutters in the draft. The front door hangs open. Outside, snow. Still falling. Still perfect. No footprints. No sound. No sign of him. They said he walked out into the storm and never came back. But there were no tracks in the snow. No missing truck. No suicide note. Just one vanished man. And a wife who got everything. Christmas is supposed to be the season of forgiveness. Of family. Of love. But for some, it's just the perfect time to disappear. When no one's watching and everyone assumes the best. But some things don't vanish. Some things rot under the snow, waiting to be found. The house was too quiet for Christmas morning. Ella Whitaker stood at the kitchen window, her eyes on the woods beyond the driveway. A dusting of snow had settled overnight, erasing everything. The trees were white like bones wrapped in silk. On the counter behind her, the coffee was still hot. 2 cups. Only one touched. The plate of scrambled eggs had gone cold. The toast uneaten. She reached for the landline. Her hand trembled slightly, but only enough to look genuine. She pressed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My husband, she said softly, pulling her cardigan tighter. He went out to get firewood last night. He didn't come back. I think something happened to him. The dispatcher's voice was calm. What's your location? She gave the address. Was there an argument before he left? A long pause. Just long enough to sound honest. No, she said, brushing her hair behind one ear. Everything was perfect. But it wasn't. Not even close. Because Daniel Whitaker never made it out the door. And no one was going to find him, not where she put him. 3 days earlier, December 22nd. The air between them in the car had felt thick. Even the Christmas music on the radio couldn't cut through it. Daniel had barely spoken the whole ride up to the cabin. He kept his eyes on the road, his jaw locked, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Ella pretended not to notice. She hummed along with Bing Crosby and sent a few quick texts under her coat. They had done this every year since they bought the place. Just the two of them. No family. No kids. No interruptions. But this year wasn't like the others. This year, Daniel had started asking questions. A week earlier, he'd received an envelope at the office. No return address. Inside, copies of legal documents with his forged signature. Someone had been poking around. Someone who knew. Ella had transferred Daniel's ownership in the company behind his back. Signed and sealed under power of attorney he didn't remember granting. The company was worth $20 million. And if Daniel vanished, she got it all. He confronted her that night in the city, waving the papers in her face. She hadn't denied it, just told him he'd misunderstood. That it was just a draft, that the lawyer had made a mistake. But Daniel knew, and she knew he knew. Christmas Eve, 9:15 p.m. They had dinner like everything was normal. Roasted lamb, red wine, candles. The fire crackled behind them. Ella wore a black satin dress, his favorite. She poured the wine slowly. She smiled the way she used to when they were happy. When he believed she married him for love. You're being nice, Daniel said, looking at her through narrowed eyes. Too nice. Ella raised her glass and clinked his. Because it's our last Christmas here. His brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled. You'll see. Christmas morning. Daniel was gone. The front door was open. The fire was out. His boots sat by the threshold, dry and untouched. No tracks led away from the house. No broken branches. No sign of a struggle. Deputy Reyes arrived just before 9 a.m., squinting up at the house from the snowy drive. Ella greeted him in a soft gray cardigan, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired, scared, almost too perfect. I just woke up and he wasn't here, she whispered, her eyes glistening. The door was wide open. I thought maybe he went for wood, but... Reyes inspected the area. The woodpile was still full. The axe hadn't moved. Daniel's truck was still parked outside, keys on the hook in the entryway. You said you fell asleep on the couch? He asked. Ella nodded, lowering her eyes. I didn't hear anything. By the time news broke of Daniel Whitaker's disappearance, sympathy poured in from everywhere. Former employees, corporate partners, the media. He was a respected man. Brilliant, generous, and now, gone without a trace. Ella held a press conference on the courthouse steps. She wore no makeup, no ring, Just a clean coat and red-rimmed eyes. "I just want him back," she said. "Whatever happened, I just want to know." Reporters took her photo as snow drifted down gently onto her shoulders. America ate it up. The grieving wife, the tragic loss. No one asked about the insurance policy, or the company documents, or the last person to see him alive. But something was coming. Because what Ella didn't know, what kept whispering through the cracks of her perfect plan, was that Daniel hadn't been alone in those final days. Someone else knew, and someone had started watching her. Subscribe now to see how Ella Whitaker's perfect holiday begins to unravel, because secrets buried in snow don't stay hidden forever. The snow hadn't stopped. It came down steady now in thick, patient flakes, covering every inch of the Whitaker cabin in a blanket of silence. On the surface, everything looked the same. Untouched. Calm. But inside, Ella was unraveling. She hadn't slept since the night Daniel vanished. She tried, God knows she tried, but every time her eyes closed she saw his face. Not smiling. Not warm. Just staring at her. Accusing. She sat at the kitchen table now, turning her wedding ring over and over between her fingers. The TV in the living room played muted coverage of Daniel's disappearance. His college photo was up on the screen, youthful, ambitious, full of promise. She hated that photo. She took a sip of wine. It was 11 a.m. Too early, but who was counting? The knock at the door came quietly. 2 taps. Light, polite. Ella's stomach twisted. No one should be here. Not this far into the mountains, not without calling first. And she knew for a fact Deputy Reyes wouldn't bother knocking. Not after yesterday's full sweep of the area came up with nothing. She waited. Another 2 knocks. Firmer. She stood slowly, set her glass down, and walked to the door. When she opened it, no one was there. Just snow. And sitting on the welcome mat, weighted down by a small stone, was a white envelope. No name. No stamp. She looked around. Nothing but pine trees and silence. Ella crouched slowly and picked it up as if it might explode in her hand. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A photograph. And a flash drive. Her heart started pounding. She moved back inside and locked the door behind her. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance. But there was no mistaking what it showed. Daniel. Outside the cabin. 1 week ago. Standing near the woodshed. He was holding something, papers maybe. He looked angry. Distracted. In the foreground, a second figure. Blurry. Unclear. But unmistakably Ella. And the caption, handwritten in block letters across the bottom. Nice try. But someone was watching. She dropped the photo like it was on fire. The letter was typed. Plain font. No greeting. You think it's over? It isn't. I don't want your money. I don't want the company. I just want to know how far you'll go to keep your hands clean. Watch the drive. Then decide how honest you want to be. Her hands were shaking now. She fetched her laptop from the bedroom, plugged in the flash drive, and waited as the files loaded. There was only one. A video file, timestamped December 24th, 11:48 p.m. She clicked it. The video was dark at first. Then shapes began to take form. It had been filmed from across the backyard, somewhere deep in the woods, likely from a trail camera or a phone wedged into a tree. Daniel was in the frame, pacing near the fire pit. He looked tense, distracted. He glanced back at the cabin several times. Ella's voice was faint but clear from off-screen. "It doesn't have to be like this." "I'm not signing it," Daniel snapped. "I'm not just going to vanish." "Then I guess I'll have to make that decision for you." He froze. "What the hell does that mean?" The video cut off suddenly. No violence. No struggle. Just silence. The implication was enough. Ella slammed the laptop shut, breath short, mouth dry. Someone had been out there, filming them, waiting. This wasn't just surveillance. This was leverage. And whoever they were smarter than she thought. She walked to the window, heart still thudding, and pulled the curtain back. Snow. More snow. Just pine trees and stillness. But she could feel it now. That she wasn't alone anymore. Someone knew what happened. And they weren't going to the police. She needed to think. She poured another drink and sat in the chair by the fireplace. The flames had gone out again. She didn't even try to relight them. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. The voice on the other end picked up after one ring. "Ella? I need help," she said. Something's gone wrong. You said it was taken care of." "I thought it was." Pause. "What happened?" "There's someone out here. Someone who saw something." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "Do you want it handled?" Ella closed her eyes. She could still hear Daniel's voice in her head. I'm not just going to vanish. Too late. Yes, she whispered. Handle it. Across the snow-covered hills, tucked behind the edge of a frozen lake, someone sat in a parked car, engine off, binoculars on the dashboard. They watched the cabin from afar. Had been watching for days. A small notebook lay open on the passenger seat. Inside, scribbled in ink. She made the call. She's running scared. Next move, pressure. Subscribe now to uncover the blackmailer's identity, Ella's dark past, and the chilling secret hidden beneath the snow. This web is just starting to tighten. The snow had started to melt, but not fast enough to wash away guilt. The Whitaker cabin sat still, hushed, a soft mist hanging in the morning air. For the first time in a week, the clouds had broken. Sunlight poured through the trees, pooling in patches across the frozen ground. Everything looked almost peaceful. But Ella Whitaker hadn't slept. She hadn't moved from the armchair by the fire since dawn. The white envelope lay open on the side table. The flash drive had been removed, destroyed, crushed beneath the heel of her boot and tossed into the fireplace. But the video was burned into her mind. Then I guess I'll have to make that decision for you. She hadn't meant to say it like that. At least that's what she told herself. But the truth was, when you cross a line, it's hard to pretend you didn't know you were stepping over it. The phone vibrated against the table. Ella jumped, her nerves taut. A text. A known number. Next time it goes public. There was no punctuation. No name. No reply option. Ella stared at the message, heart pounding, then tossed the phone across the room. It hit the wall and slid to the floor. She stood abruptly and walked to the liquor cabinet. Scotch neat. 2 fingers. It burned going down. She had made one call already, to a fixer from her past life in D.C. She hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. Not since the investor scandal that got buried before it exploded. He cleaned things. Buried problems. Paid the right people to forget. But he wasn't a miracle worker. And whoever was watching her now wasn't in it for money. That made them dangerous. The same morning, 40 miles away, in a modest apartment over a hardware store, someone fed the surveillance footage into editing software. The footage was raw. Quiet. Captured on a camouflage trail cam that had been placed on public land 3 months earlier, just beyond the Whitaker's property line. Initially set up for wildlife footage, it had captured something else entirely. The voice on the recording was unmistakable. Ellis. She hadn't meant to confess. But her tone, her words, her presence in that frame told a story louder than any courtroom drama. And Daniel? He was never seen again after that night. The observer, Callum Briggs, former forensic accountant, sat hunched over the desk, his coffee gone cold. Daniel Whitaker had hired him quietly just 3 weeks before he vanished. After noticing unusual activity in the company's books, ownership restructuring, unexplained withdrawals, digital authorizations Daniel swore he never approved, he brought in Callum. But he was too late. By the time Callum pieced together enough to raise the alarm, Daniel had disappeared. And Ella was on every news channel, sobbing behind a microphone, wrapped in a perfect coat. But Callum wasn't interested in tears. He was interested in facts, signatures, power of attorney, paper trails. And the fact that Ella had made millions from Daniel's death, and never filed a missing persons insurance delay, that was enough to keep digging. Back at the cabin, Ella paced the living room, muttering to herself. There's no way they know everything, she whispered. They're bluffing. They have that clip, but that's it. Still, her paranoia was growing roots. She hadn't left the house in 48 hours. The blinds were always closed. Her phone stayed powered down, battery removed, unless she needed to make a call. She rechecked the security system, newly installed. She scanned the woods with binoculars. Nothing. And yet, she felt it, like eyes on her skin. She returned to Daniel's study. This was the one place she hadn't fully gone through. Out of fear. Or guilt. Maybe both. The room still smelled like him, cedar, printer toner, and that expensive aftershave he never used unless he was pitching a big account. The desk drawers were clean. Laptop gone. She made sure of that. But when she opened the bottom drawer, something slid loose. A legal pad. Torn in places. Folded around a bundle of papers bound with a black rubber band. She opened it. Inside, handwritten notes. A checklist. Emails printed and highlighted. Documents with her name circled. Bold ink across the top of the first page. If anything happens to me, start here. Ella's knees buckled. She sat down hard in his chair, flipping through pages. Most of it was familiar, financials, accounts, signatures she faked. But the last few pages weren't hers. They were logs. Daniel had been documenting her. Every login. Every document access. He knew. And he had written it all down in case she followed through. And she had. Her vision blurred. She slammed the notebook closed, breathing shallow, staring at the ceiling. That's what the blackmailer had. That's what they wanted her to know. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You found his notebook. Ready to talk now? Later that night, Callum sat in his car overlooking the cabin from a remote turnout on an old forestry road. He knew he couldn't keep playing cat and mouse forever. He wasn't law enforcement. He wasn't even officially hired anymore. But he had something no one else had. Motive? Not for money. Not revenge. But for truth. Daniel had trusted him. And Ella had stolen more than assets. She had stolen a life and rewritten it as a widow's tale. Callum lifted the old flip phone he used only for this case. He typed a single message. Meet me tomorrow. Just you. No tricks. No backup. Or I go to the press. He hit send. And waited. Subscribe now. Ella's secrets are surfacing fast. But what's waiting in Daniel's files may expose more than murder. The real inheritance isn't money, it's what he left behind. A white Range Rover idles in an empty gravel lot surrounded by trees. Wind whistles through bare branches. Snow crunches under boots. Ella steps out slowly, dressed in black. Gloved hands. No expression. Across the lot, a man leans against a tree. Dark coat. Face obscured by a knit cap and scarf. They don't speak for several seconds. Just watch each other. Ella. Do you want money? Callum. No. I want the truth. He drops an envelope at her feet. Daniel didn't disappear. He left instructions in case you killed him. And now I have them. The cabin was colder than it should have been. Ella wrapped herself in a wool coat and lit the fireplace for the third time that morning, but it barely made a difference. The walls felt thinner. The windows darker. The air off. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Hadn't slept really. Every time her eyes closed, she saw him. Daniel. Standing in the woods. Blood on the snow. It was guilt. Or stress. Or both. But worse than the hallucinations was this. Someone knew. She checked her phone again. The last message still glared at her screen. 10 a.m. Trailhead Lot. Come alone. She stared at it a long time, then powered the phone off and slid it into a drawer. 9:43 a.m. The gun felt heavier than it used to. She kept it in a cloth bag tucked in her coat pocket, just beneath her scarf. Ella wasn't one to lose control. She was methodical. Plain. She had handled scandals, shareholders, and Senate-level egos. But this wasn't a scandal. This was a reckoning. And reckoning required insurance. She started the car. 10:01 a.m., Bearclaw Ridge Trailhead. The lot was quiet. Mist moved like smoke through the trees. She stepped out of the Rover slowly. No wind. No birds. Just a single dark figure standing 20 yards away, facing her. Waiting. Ella's boots crunched over gravel. Her hand slipped into her coat, fingers brushing the gun grip. The man didn't flinch. He waited until she was just close enough to hear his voice. Nice morning, he said. Ella narrowed her eyes. You've been watching me. He didn't deny it. I worked for your husband. That stopped her. For a split second, the wind howled through her chest. Impossible, she whispered. He pulled something from his pocket, a notebook page folded once. The same words written across the top in Daniel's hand. If anything happens to me, start here. I'm Callum Briggs, he said. Daniel hired me 3 weeks before Christmas. He thought you were stealing from him. He didn't know you were going to bury him. She didn't respond. Her face was stone, but her heart slammed against her ribs. He dropped an envelope at her feet. In there, he said, is everything. The new will. His logs. Your forged documents. The video. The timeline. And most importantly, backup copies. She crouched slowly, picked up the envelope, and felt the weight. There's still time to cooperate, he added. Step down. Confess. Do it quietly. And I'll stop this from becoming a headline. She looked up. You think this is about headlines? No, he said flatly. It's about justice. Back at the cabin, the fireplace was roaring again, but it did nothing to thaw the frost building in Ella's blood. She paced the room, heart beating loud in her ears. Then she opened the envelope. Inside were copies, scanned files, photos, signatures, even audio transcripts from video surveillance. The page that gutted her the most? A signed affidavit from Daniel, dated December 20th. 4 days before he disappeared. If I go missing, assume Ella Whitaker is responsible. I have moved financial control to a secured trust. All evidence is with Callum Briggs. The bastard planned for everything. She threw the papers across the room. She made 3 calls that night. 1 to her lawyer. To begin the illusion of compliance, step down temporarily, cite emotional distress. 1 to her fixer. To get Callum's name, his location, his background. Make sure he doesn't live long enough to send anything else. And 1 to her bank. To begin transferring assets into international accounts. Quietly. Irretrievably. This was now a race. Between her cleanup and Callum's countdown. But in a rented motel room 2 hours away, Callum was already sending the next wave. He uploaded a zipped file to 3 secure recipients. A whistleblower reporter in Boston. A federal fraud investigator. Daniel's mother. He didn't do it out of revenge. He did it because Daniel had trusted him. And because dead men leave trails, Ella just didn't know how to cover them all. Subscribe now. The evidence is out. The storm has passed. But Ella's final move is coming, and someone is about to end up in the ground. For real this time. A young reporter stares at the screen, stunned. Open files. Voice recordings. Legal documents. Reporter. This woman didn't just inherit the company. She rewrote the books. Faked federal filings. And now her husband's missing. She looks up. There's a body coming. I guarantee it. Editor. Send it to the FBI. Now. At the Boston Journal, investigative reporter Leah Ingram knew a scoop when she saw one. But this wasn't a scoop. This was a bomb. The email had come from a secure anonymous account. Callum Briggs, forensic investigator. Confidential disclosure. Leah had expected another startup CEO tax dodge. Maybe some offshore accounts. But what she found instead? A woman with blood on her hands. A man who had vanished on Christmas. And a hard drive of digital breadcrumbs, emails, video clips, notarized statements, GPS data, and a posthumous testimony. This was more than a fraud case. This was a murder waiting to be proved. Ella lit the fire with shaking hands. Her calls hadn't gone as planned. The fixer had failed to locate Callum Briggs. No address. No traceable phone. Ghosted. He's smart. Too smart. Her lawyer had advised a public statement soon. Something neutral. Grieving. Controlled. But the press had already begun to circle. Whispers were growing louder. Why hadn't she filed a delay on Daniel's insurance payout? Why was the company's power of attorney signed just weeks before his disappearance? Why hadn't she reported any marital tension? And why was there no trace of Daniel anywhere? Ella pressed her palms to her temples. This was slipping. Faster than she thought possible. Agent Jordan Hale was tired. He'd just closed a financial crimes case out of Cape Cod and was ready for 48 hours without a single spreadsheet. Then Leah Ingram's file hit his inbox. He skimmed. Paused. Read slower. CEO goes missing on Christmas. Wife inherits multimillion-dollar business. Anonymous forensic investigator provides pre-recorded victim statement. Altered will. Forged documents. Video footage. Implication of murder. By the 2nd page he was sitting upright. By the 5th he was calling his supervisor. By the 7th they had opened a preliminary file on Ella Whitaker. Sheriff Douglas Reyes sat in his office flipping through photos from the cabin search again. Something had always felt off. No footprints. No coat taken. The firewood untouched. But he'd assumed, like everyone else, that Daniel had wandered off. Got lost. Got cold. Until now. An FBI liaison walked into his office with a folder and a single question. Did you check the creek bed? The knock on the door came like a thunderclap. Ella jolted from the couch, still wrapped in a blanket, hair undone, face pale. She peeked through the peephole. 2 men. Suits. Badges. FBI. She opened the door slowly, heart pounding. Ella Whitaker? One asked. Yes. We need to ask you a few questions about your husband. They were polite. Professional. Not accusing. Not yet. But their presence changed everything. They asked about the marriage. About the business. The last few days before Daniel vanished. She gave them answers. Measured, practiced, still playing the grieving wife. They nodded, took notes, offered condolences. Then one of them asked a final question. Would you mind if we walked the property again? The dogs found it before the men did. The soil near the edge had been disturbed, subtly. Like it had been tamped down just enough to freeze over. One dog started digging. Barking. The other joined. Minutes later, a deputy's shovel struck something hard. A glint of metal. They froze, unearthed it carefully. A Rolex watch, engraved on the back. To Daniel. For 10 years of building something bigger than us. Sheriff Reyes stared at it for a long moment. Then he stood and made the call. She saw them coming. 2 cruisers. 1 unmarked car. 1 canine unit. The moment the first dog barked, she knew. They'd found something. She backed away from the window, slowly, hands clutching the edge of the kitchen island. In her coat pocket, the burner phone buzzed once. A single message from an unknown contact. They're here. Time to run. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the emergency bag from the floorboards, already packed. IDs. Passports. Ella Whitaker didn't plan for mistakes. But she did plan for escape. She was out the back door and into the woods before the first knock. Callum refreshed the news feed on his laptop. The first article was up. Exclusive. Missing CEO's wife tied to financial scandal. FBI investigation confirmed. The public was waking up. The comments flooded in. Some doubting. Some furious. Some vindicated. Daniel's name was trending. And now, so was Ella's. Callum exhaled slowly and whispered under his breath. Game on. Subscribe as we proceed. The hunt has begun. Ella's gone underground, but her past is catching up fast. And what the FBI uncovers next will blow the whole story open. Sheriff Reyes. We just wanted to find a missing man. Now we've got a body. A forged will. And a wife who's vanished into the woods. Agent Hale. She doesn't run unless she's guilty. Let's go get her. The forest was still in the early light. Wind moved softly through the trees. Pine needles dusted with frost. Snow packed tight underfoot. Every sound, every breath, echoed like a warning. Ella moved fast but quiet. She knew these woods better than most. The escape route had been planned for years. Just in case. She had a pack, food for 3 days, $10,000 in cash, burner phones, and a forged ID. Her plan was to hike 12 miles to an old ranger station with an ATV. From there, a back road would lead to a contact in Montpelier. A clean car. A new identity. Ella Whitaker would vanish for good. Or so she thought. The FBI had set up operations out of a local ranger lodge. Agent Hale stood over a satellite map of the region, plotting every possible escape path from the Whitaker cabin. She's smart, he muttered. But she's arrogant. He circled an unmarked trail system on the west side of the property. She doesn't go south, too close to town. She doesn't go east, exposed roads. That leaves north and northwest. Dogs are ready, one agent said. Let them loose. Ella's legs burned. Her breath came in sharp gasps. She was close now. Less than 3 miles to the ATV. She reached a narrow bridge that crossed a frozen creek. Halfway across, she paused, knees trembling. It looked like a postcard. So pure. Like nothing had ever happened. But it had. She'd taken everything from Daniel, his company, his control, and eventually, his life. And now it was all unraveling. She reached for her water bottle, tilted her head back, and froze. There it was. A faint click. Too late. From the trees, a voice. Drop the bag, Ella. She turned sharply. Saw movement. 2 agents, rifles drawn. Then a third figure appeared. Callum. Unarmed. Come. Watching her. She backed away slowly. You have no idea what I've done, she hissed. I know exactly what you've done, he replied. You think Daniel was innocent? She snapped. He was building an empire without me. He was rewriting me out of everything. All I did was take what I was owed. Callum stepped forward, slow and steady. Daniel wasn't perfect, he said. But he didn't deserve to be buried under ice and forgotten. She looked at him, eyes wild, defiant. Then you'd better arrest me, she said. I'm not the one with cuffs, Callum said, nodding to Agent Hale behind her. She turned. And the world dropped out beneath her feet. Former CEO Ella Whitaker was arrested in the Berkshire Mountains after a 2-week investigation revealed evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and the murder of her husband, Daniel Whitaker, whose body was found buried near their vacation cabin. The case has sparked national attention as a cautionary tale about power, control, and the fine line between ambition and destruction. Ella sat in the corner of the concrete room. No lawyers, no mirrors, just her and the silence. She stared at her reflection in the stainless steel sink. For the first time in years, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Callum sat by the window, laptop open, final files uploading to a secure archive. Evidence sealed. Legacy preserved. He stared out at the cold night. Daniel had trusted him. And now the truth was out. It wasn't justice in the grand sense. There was no satisfaction in it, no victory. Just the end of a story someone tried to erase. And now it belonged to the world. Two hikers wander off trail near the old creek bed. One stops. "Hey, is that?" They crouch near a tree. Half buried in the snow is a small, sealed box. Inside, a flash drive. A photo of Daniel and another man, smiling. And a note. Not everything was about Ella. There's more. Much more. In the end, she vanished too, just not in the way she planned. But evil doesn't begin with a gun, or a body, or a missing man. It begins the moment someone decides they deserve more. And it ends when the silence finally breaks. You've seen how the lie unraveled. Now it's time to ask, what would you do to get everything? And what would it cost? Tap subscribe so you don't miss our next story drop. New dark thrillers, true crime-inspired fiction, and web series that make your heart race. Like if this story had you hooked until the final scene. Comment with your theory. Did Ella act alone? Or was Daniel hiding something deeper? Should Callum come back in another case? Your voice drives what we create next. We're just getting started. Some endings are just the beginning. See you in the next story.